You've probably tried it. Standing in front of a mirror saying, I am confident, or I am worthy, or money flows to me easily. And instead of feeling better, you just felt a little stupid. Maybe even worse than before you started. If that's happened to you, I want to tell you up front. That's not you doing it wrong. There's an actual study behind why this happens. And once you understand the mechanism, it changes how you think about affirmations for good. Not by throwing them out, but by finally understanding why they've never quite worked the way the books promised. Let's start with why affirmations became such a fixture of self-help in the first place. The idea has roots going back to the New Thought movement in the 1800s. But it really took off in the 20th century through people like Émile Coué, a French psychologist who had patients repeat, "Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better." Coué actually noticed real effects. Patients did report improvement. But what he stumbled onto wasn't magic. It was an early, unpolished glimpse of something psychology now understands much more precisely: the placebo effect, expectation, and the power of belief to shape perception. The tool wasn't wrong. It just got inherited by later generations without the nuance of when and for whom it actually works. That brings us to 2009 and a psychologist named Joanne Wood, along with colleagues John Lee and Elaine Perunovich at the University of Waterloo. They decided to actually test something everyone in self-help just assumed was true: that repeating a positive statement about yourself makes you feel better. Nobody had really put it under a microscope, so they did. Here's the setup. They gathered a group of participants and measured their existing self-esteem, sorting people into high and low self-esteem groups. Then some participants were asked to repeat the statement, "I'm a lovable person," to themselves, over and over, while others were told to just focus on ways the statement was both true and not true, and a third group did nothing at all. Afterward, everyone's mood was measured. And here's the part that surprised almost everyone, including some of the researchers themselves. For people who already had high self-esteem, repeating the affirmation gave them a small, modest boost in mood. That part isn't shocking. It lines up with what you'd expect. But for people with low self-esteem, the exact people affirmations are marketed to, the ones buying the books and doing the mirror exercises, the affirmation made them feel worse. Not neutral, measurably worse than the group that said nothing at all. Let that sit for a second, because it's the whole point of this video. The people affirmations are supposedly for are the people they hurt the most. So why would that happen? The explanation researchers point to is something in psychology called latitude of acceptance. Basically, everyone has a range of ideas about themselves they're willing to accept as plausible. If a statement falls inside that range, you take it in without much friction. But if it falls way outside that range, if some part of you doesn't buy, "I'm a lovable person," for a second, your brain doesn't just quietly file it away. It pushes back. It starts generating counter-evidence in real time. And the act of arguing with yourself, even silently, ends up reminding you of every reason you don't believe the statement in the first place. So instead of building yourself up, you've handed your own brain a highlight reel of your insecurities. There's a name researchers use for what happens next: the widening gap. The affirmation doesn't shrink the distance between how you feel and how you want to feel. It actually makes that distance more visible, more painful, because now you've explicitly compared the two. None of this is mystical. It's not about resistance or blocked energy in any cosmic sense. It's just ordinary persuasion psychology. A message you already half believe pulls you a little further in that direction. That's called assimilation. A message that's too far from what you currently believe can actually push you the opposite way. That's called contrast. Advertisers, negotiators, and political campaigns have used versions of this for decades. Self-help just borrowed the tool without the warning label. So does this mean affirmations are a waste of time? No. And this is where a lot of manifestation content oversimplifies things in both directions, either treating affirmations as guaranteed magic or writing them off completely. The research doesn't say affirmations don't work. It says they don't work as a one-size-fits-all blunt instrument, and that the standard advice you've probably heard, just repeat the positive thing enough times and eventually you'll believe it, actively backfires for the people who need help the most. So what actually helps, according to the research that followed? One finding that stands out: framing the statement as a question instead of a flat declaration. Later studies found that asking yourself, "Am I a lovable person?" tends to work better than stating, "I am a lovable person," for a very specific reason. A question invites your brain to go looking for evidence, rather than demanding it accept something it's already rejecting outright. A statement can trigger defensiveness. A question triggers curiosity. That's a small shift in wording with a real, measurable difference in effect. Another piece worth pulling out: specific and true beats big and vague almost every time. "I handled that conversation better than I expected to" is something your brain can actually verify. You can point to the moment it happened. "I am a limitless, unstoppable force of abundance" is not verifiable in any way. And for anyone who doesn't already feel that way deep down, it just reads as an obvious lie you're telling yourself in a mirror. The bigger and more inflated the claim, the further it tends to sit outside your latitude of acceptance, and the harder your brain pushes back. There's also a difference between affirming an outcome and affirming a process. "I am rich" invites your brain to compare your bank account to the statement and immediately object. "I'm someone who follows through on small financial decisions" is closer to something you can actually build evidence for day by day, which matters because self-esteem research consistently shows that real earned evidence changes self-belief far more reliably than repetition alone ever does. So if you've tried affirmations before and they didn't work, or actively made you feel worse, this is probably why. You weren't broken, and you weren't doing manifestation wrong. You were handed a tool that was quietly built for people who already believed the good thing about themselves and marketed to the exact people who didn't. Here's what I'd actually suggest if you want to try this again with a more honest approach. Skip the big, sweeping statement. Instead, ask yourself a specific question you can actually answer with something true. "What's one thing I handled well today?" Or, Is there any evidence I'm capable of this? And let your brain go find the answer instead of force feeding it a conclusion. It's slower. It's less dramatic. It won't make a good sticky note on its own. But based on the actual research, it's far more likely to move you in the direction you're going for. And maybe the bigger takeaway here isn't really about affirmations specifically. It's about how easily a genuinely useful psychological idea, the fact that belief and repetition can shape mood and behavior, gets flattened into a one-line slogan by the time it reaches a self-help shelf. The nuance is where the actual value was the whole time. If you want more of these, where we take something popular in manifestation spaces and hold it up against what psychology actually says, subscribe and let me know in the comments. Have affirmations ever made you feel worse instead of better? I'd genuinely like to know how common this is.